Main quest: Murdered Informant. They stopped at a street vendor for dinner before making their way back to Malik's mansion. Remy recognized Malik's personal guard even from a distance. There were at least half a dozen men congregating outside the mansion. Every one of them wore black cloaks, or black armor, or black masks. "What do you think's going on?" Nightingale asked, her voice barely a whisper. "Do you think we should come back later, maybe?" Remy thought about it for a few seconds, then shook her head. "No. Everybody stay close. I'll get you in." Remy advanced purposefully towards the front door, squaring her shoulders and not looking away from the door. It didn't work. One of the men stepped in front of her, blocking the door with broad shoulders. "Sorry, you can't come in." "Like hell I can't." Remy ducked under one of his arms. "It's my house." As big as he was, the man seemed surprised by her determination. He actually dodged out of her way, and Remy was able to shove on the door. It was unlocked and swung in with the violence of her pressure. None of the house servants were in the entryway, though there were a few startled guards. They moved as though to lift their weapons. Remy glowered at them. "What are you going to do? Attack me? Doesn't my family pay you to protect us?" One of the guards whispered to the other, and they both relaxed. Then they lowered their weapons, reluctantly getting out of her way. "A little fiery, aren't we?" Zeke mused in awe that Remy could be so commanding. "Well, it's my place. I should be able to come and go as I please," Remy said with a quick glance back at him. "Fair enough," Zeke replied. Remy still remembered the house, and so she had no trouble leading the way. She could hear voices from further in, probably the courtyard. One was her father's, though she couldn't place the identity of the other one, but it was a female voice. "It couldn't have been an accident," the woman said. "Whoever took it knew at least one of the combinations. The evidence for that was clear enough from what was left. We need to make the firmest possible action before the situation gets away from us. They might bring the thing to my estate next." The female voice was practically screeching. "What we can't do is tip our hand," Malik replied. "There are too many in the city who would seize on such a visible sign of weakness. Our reaction must be firm and swift, but not panicked." Around the first corner was a set of wide doors leading into the courtyard. As Remy rounded them, she suddenly had an uninterrupted view. Her father stood beside one of the fountains, and at his side a sleazy-looking girl was talking to him. She was dressed quite casually, and her clothing resembled something someone would wear on Earth. Ripped jeans and a half-open leather top. She was lithe and thin, with full-sleeve tattoos of twisting plants rising up both her arms. Her hair was bright green, and a pair of pointed vulpine ears emerged from the side of her head. "Dad, what's going on?" Remy called from the doorway, glancing inside. There were 2 more guards inside, though they wore white and blue colors and flanked the woman instead of her father. "Remy, you're safe." Malik looked over at her, and Remy made her way over. Her father embraced her with noticeable relief. "Thank God you're okay. Grace Jong said she hadn't seen you, and I was worried." "We're fine." Remy looked up at the stranger, confused. "Grace Jong? I didn't even know she was actually expecting us. How would she have even known we were here?" "I know everything that happens in my city." The thin girl had turned towards Remy now. "Circumstances have occurred that made me and Malik worry for your safety, but I can see that you're perfectly fine." Remy blushed and then tried to straighten herself for a formal bow. "Duchess, I didn't know it was you. If I had known, I would—" Grace cut her off with a short tone. "Oh, please, save the bullshit formalities for the puffed-up royalty of Alenia. They have no place here." Grace looked past Remy, finally noticing her companions. "Zeke, is that you?" Zeke simply nodded. He hadn't recognized Grace and realized at that moment that even if she was supposedly present for his arrival to Madara, he didn't even remember seeing her before. "Cousin!" Grace squealed, her tone changing from deadly serious to jovial. "Malik told me you were here. He said you were headed to my castle to stay the night. You really should have visited." Zeke returned an awkward hug. "We found an inn we liked before we made it. We likely would have come by eventually." "No doubt. And you—" Grace had noticed Zeke's other female companion, and she extended a hand to Nightingale. "You're Balthazar's youngest, if I'm not mistaken." Nightingale took the offered hand, though she didn't get a chance to say anything. Remy met her father's eyes again. "What's with all the guards?" "There's been a murder in Romstead." Malik's expression darkened. There was a moment of shocked silence. "Murder?" Remy stammered. "You can't be serious." Rook hadn't been introduced, but even so, he seemed to notice the informality of the meeting. "Nobody would kill another human being when they could live forever?" Grace finished for him. "Oh, they would. Don't be naive. There are scoundrels with little moral compunction here, just like back on Earth. As Duchess of Romstead, seeing their punishment as swift and brutal as possible is my responsibility." She frowned disapprovingly at them. "You should have stayed at my castle last night, where there are guards and high walls." "It's worse than just a murder," Malik added, addressing his daughter directly. "Sweetie, the man who was murdered was one of my information brokers, the one I rely on for information about exotic magic. Whoever killed him got away with all kinds of important documents. I'm afraid that finding anything about Theodosian is going to be much harder now." Remy was frozen for a moment, unable to respond. Nightingale's life depended on learning the truth about Theodosian, and her best hope for finding it had just been murdered. "Well then, we'll just have to track down the one who did it. We've already fought dozens of monsters. What's a few more?" Malik's expression twisted with a wave of mixed emotions. "I promised your mother I wouldn't get you involved in all this. Let me handle this. There is danger here you can't imagine." "I'm not going to sit by and watch my friend die because some asshole stole the papers we need." Remy put a hand on her hip and tried not to look frail in the presence of her father. Grace interjected, sounding annoyed. "Watch your friend die?" Nightingale shot Remy an angry glance, and Remy realized what she had just said. Remy sheepishly looked over and saw that both her father and Grace were looking at her, expecting an explanation. "It's really important we find more about Theodosian. Nightingale's life might depend on it," Remy pleaded. "What?" Grace's eyes went wide. "Where is Balthazar in all this? Why is his daughter in such a perilous position? He'd have our heads if he even knew she was in this room. If we got Nightingale killed by letting her quest on her own, we'd be lucky if our heads were the only ones the arsons took." Malik nodded in agreement. "Grace is right, Remy. You can't get involved. If anything happened to any of you, it would mean trouble for all of us. Please, just let us take care of it. If we hear anything, we'll let you know." Remy glared back. "Yeah?" She glanced over her shoulder at her friends. They all watched her, including Nightingale. She was obviously trying to hide it, but there was a look of desperation in Nightingale's eyes. It was more than Remy could stand. "Fine. Whatever. You just take care of it then." She turned away. "Find me if you change your mind. We'll just stay out of your way." She stormed past her friends, dragging Nightingale by her wrist. They followed her out the doors of the room and around a corner. "Remy!" Malik yelled after her, but she kept moving, ignoring her father. She didn't hear the rest of what Malik had to say because by then she'd already made it to the front door. She held it open for her friends before slamming it shut and glaring at the guards, daring them to try to make her stay. They didn't.